Hi, everybody, and thank you very much for joining today's session. We're just going to give it a few seconds before we start the webinar, just to make sure that everybody is able to attend and everybody can hear me okay. So we'll just give it another couple of seconds just for everybody to come in, and we'll get started. Perfect. Okay, I think we've got quite a few more in now, so we'll make a start because there's lots to cover in the next hour or so. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining today's session. So it's all about everything you need to know before you roll out Copilot. Now, this isn't to say that you absolutely have to do all of these things before you buy licenses and before you start using it. There may be some people in the audience who've already started implementing it and just want to know some tips and tricks. So this should help you if you're thinking about rolling out Copilot, if you're in the middle of doing it, if you've done it and then maybe you need some support or some help. So it should give you an all-rounded view on best practices. So before we start, we will do the obligatory who we are. So we are CPS, Corporate Project Solutions, and we're Microsoft partner. So we deliver these projects to organisations and different industries around the UK. We're very proud of our 3 Microsoft Partner of the Year awards, and we have all of the relevant badges on here. The reason I wanted to share this slide was really just to let you know that although today we're talking about Copilot, we do have expertise in the entire Microsoft stack. So if you need support with migrating to the cloud, with adoption change management, with Dynamics or Power Platform project, any type of modern work solution, we are absolutely here to help. So we could be your go-to partner for all things Microsoft, including Copilot. And talking about Copilot, I did just want to share some customers that we have worked with. So we have implemented Copilot for a lot of different organizations over the past year or so. That includes police forces, local government, NHS, commercial customers, not-for-profit organisations. So we do have a wealth of experience in a wide variety of sectors. And just to show you kind of how many in terms of our credentials, so we have helped 33 organisations deploy Copilot for Microsoft 365. That number is also growing. So there are a few more organizations that we've added to that list, but we have a huge amount of experience with different types of organizations, different sizes, organizations who have 15 Copilot licenses, organizations who have 2,000 Copilot licenses, and everything in between. And because we've worked with so many different organizations, we actually have a huge catalog of over 200 different use cases for Copilot for Microsoft 365. Again, that goes across lots of different industries, that goes across lots of different applications. And that's what we really want to use when we're engaging with organizations. Use our use cases. So you can create your own ones, and that's absolutely valid and something that we'd recommend you do. But we do have a bank of use cases that we can start from, that we've got savings for, we've got prompts for, and it just makes it a little bit easier to start. We have also worked with a lot of organizations on a business case for Copilot. And in doing that, in the first year of implementing Copilot among our customers where we have worked to calculate ROI and create a business case, we found over £10 million of savings across multiple customers in year 1 of using Copilot. And I'll talk a little bit later on about what those savings are, what they come in the form of, and how to measure that as well. So I guess here we just wanted to say we're absolutely in the best place to talk about how to implement Copilot, and also provide you with some useful real experience from implementing this from multiple different customers over the last year. So who am I? So I should maybe I started with this, but I am Kat Beedham. So I'm the head of modern work, and I was trying to turn my camera on. We're having some slight issues with our meeting today, so you can see my face, but you've got my face there. So I'm the head of modern work. So I manage the team of consultants and architects who deliver Copilot projects to our customers, and I was also the tech lead for the Barnsley Council rollout of Copilot for over 2,000 users this year. My LinkedIn is in the QR code and my email is there. So if you do want to reach out for questions or you want to engage in work with CPS or just want to know more, please feel free to reach out. All right, so let's get started with the actual content from today. So what are we going to be talking about? So really, it's everything you need to know before you roll out Copilot. As I mentioned, it's not necessarily before you roll out Copilot. You could be in the middle of a rollout. Maybe you've started, maybe you're getting some resistance, and you want some tips and tricks. Now, the technology that we are talking about today is Copilot for Microsoft 365. So that's the one that we're focusing on. There are many Copilots. There's Copilot for security, Copilot Studio, there's kind of just OpenAI in general. Today we are focusing on Copilot for Microsoft 365. So this is the Copilot that you get in your Office apps. So Word, Outlook, Excel, PowerPoint, and so on. You also have access to it in Microsoft Forms, OneNote, Loop, Whiteboard. So you get kind of Copilot throughout Office. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we're going to be talking about implementation, what do you need to do, what's our recommendations based on all of our experience working with customers, what we found works well, what doesn't work well, and just kind of share that knowledge with you. So there are two main areas to consider when you are implementing Microsoft 365. The first one is, so we have a Copilot kind of checklist. In any new technology implementation, it is always best practice to make sure that you have a key sponsor on board. So that is usually a senior stakeholder, someone in the organization who has influence over the organization, and they will be involved in kind of pushing the message of we're using Copilot. We are, we're at the front of digital, changes in technology. We're going to be utilizing this amazing tool. It's going to help us save time. It's going to help us deliver better customer service, better services to the public. And this is the direction that the organization's going in. They don't have to be that involved, but if they could just be involved to kind of help push that message out, that always helps. It helps manage resistance and it helps get the organization on board. So just get your key sponsor on board with using AI for productivity. Scenarios I'll touch on in a second. So I'll kind of cover some of the key scenarios to look at. And then security. So what does that look like in terms of the journey? So the first thing that we need to think about is user enablement. This is very, very important. Believe it or not, using Copilot for Microsoft 365, a lot of it is adoption and change management. We have worked with organizations who have turned on Copilot and asked people to use it, and that's kind of it. And that failed because it is a brand new way of working. It is not a search bar. It's not a button that you click and it does something. It's a really new concept. It's talking to a chatbot as if it's a person. That's a really weird thing to do for anybody. People are wary of AI as well. There's lots of resistance. People don't have time to sit and learn how to do it. And so Copilot usage is very low. People aren't using it. People don't care. It's you're not getting the value for your license investment. So making sure, and I'm going to go through some tips and tricks on this as well, making sure that you are prepared for user adoption. You've got training, you've got comms, you've got resistance management, you've got a center of excellence, you've got somewhere for people to share success stories. That needs to be there for it to be successful. I'll also talk a little bit, if you're not rolling it out to everybody and you're just doing a pilot, some recommendations for making sure people use it in a pilot. The other thing to consider is technical readiness. So this is making sure that you are ready for Copilot from a technical point of view. So I'm going to go through some of the technical prerequisites. Don't worry if you're not a technical role on this call. We're not going to go into anything too deep, but it is just going to be, awareness of what you need to do. There are also other things to think about, like some of the security and compliance tools in Microsoft 365 that Microsoft recommend. But there are different levels to this and there are different stages. So you might be thinking, do I need to implement, the entire Microsoft security toolkit before I turn on Copilot? The answer is no, and I'll explain why that is and the approach that we recommend. So that's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to talk about user enablement, technical readiness, and hopefully share a lot of kind of guidance and tips on how you can get ready for Copilot or improve what you're already doing. So user enablement, let's start with that one. So I mentioned it was more of an adoption and change management approach. So first thing to do is think about fundamental scenarios. So this kind of is twofold. So if you are engaging and using Copilot and you want to measure the success of Copilot, which most organizations do, you want to turn it on, it's expensive. It's a license that costs money. We need to prove that it is saving us money in the long term. If you're in that position, we highly recommend that you decide on some upfront KPIs. And those KPIs, examples here, personal productivity, so it's time saving for employees. Content generation, so people are able to create better first drafts of content, so quality is improved, creativity is improved. And meeting collaboration. Meetings are more efficient, there's less meetings don't take as long. Some of these scenarios, these are kind of very top level. Underneath each of these is a whole bunch of use cases with benefit and value assigned to them. So for example, meeting and collaboration, under that we would have using Copilot to do your meeting minutes. We have actually found in one organization that using meeting minutes can save up to 2,000 hours a week across 300 people just using Copilot for meeting minutes and nothing else. They just used it for their meeting minutes. That is huge. And some organizations will look at that 2,000 hours that they can put into other work. That also helps with well-being, work-life balance. People can, leave on time instead of working too late. We work with a lot of Scottish government customers who are trying to fit the working week to 35 hours, reducing it from 38. So that helps with that goal. So each of these fundamental scenarios will have lots of use cases across from them. But the key thing is you need to decide on what you are measuring, because we want to then look at how do we capture this output? I'm going to show you the Copilot dashboard later on in this webinar, so you can actually see what data and analytics you can get. We usually do surveys, we do interviews, we do on-site work with different departments. We do use case sessions, prompt-a-thons. So there's lots of different ways that we can capture the success of Copilot, but you need to look at the measurement. What are you measuring? Are you measuring the time saved per day? Are you measuring the overall well-being of staff? Are you measuring it by active users? Are you measuring it by the survey responses about well-being and improvement to work? What is it that you are measuring? I'll give you a specific case study for this on one that we used for another customer. So I'll show you kind of what we were kind of looking at from a ROI perspective. So that's one thing to start with, is pick your measurement. How are you going to measure it? And what is it that we're going to track? What is it that we're going to look at? Once you do that, there's a couple of other things to consider, and I'm going to provide some tips on each of these as well. So establish your success measures and monitoring. So that's your, what is it, time saving? Is it number of vacancies that you want to reduce? Is it employee well-being? Those are some other examples. And how are you measuring it? Some ways that we've measured it is Copilot dashboard, interviews with staff, capturing it from use case sessions, capturing it from surveys, although some organizations are survey fatigued. So sometimes we try and find other ways to kind of pull that information and measure the success of Copilot. Build an engagement strategy. So we highly recommend engaging with communications teams, marketing teams, HR teams, anywhere we're engaging with users. One of the things that we found as we are, if we're doing training, if we're doing drop-in sessions with other organizations, that if there's not any user engagement, people don't tend to turn up to the sessions. And this is very important. So it's important to include communication. It's important to include a vision statement. So tell people why you're implementing Copilot. That should hopefully come from your key sponsor. One thing that we use for the vision statement is to help get over any kind of resistance to AI and fear that people might have. Oh, why are you getting AI to get rid of my job? Is that why you're, and we have had that resistance. So if you have a vision statement to say why you're doing it, we're doing it to give you more time back to do the bits of the job that you love doing. We're giving it to you to improve your well-being, to provide better services, so you have more time to spend on other things instead of your kind of heavy admin tasks. Those are the types of things you want to communicate to people. If you are doing a pilot of Copilot, what we found in the past with some organizations is they'll give Copilot to maybe 20 or 50 users and say, please use this and try it out and let us know how it goes, and kind of leave those people. And what happens is no one uses it because they don't know how to, or they don't have time. Also, giving it to executives sometimes doesn't work the best because executives are very busy and they don't have time to sit and use it. So if you're doing a pilot, I would highly recommend that you target who you give that license to. That could be, I would look at what we've done in the past is looked at departments that are, they maybe have the highest turnover in staff. They have the highest about well-being and work-life balance. They have high levels of sickness. Those are the departments that I would look at, admin, heavy departments, and give licenses to those people. And I wouldn't just do one department, try and get like a mixture of people as well. The reason for that is you can get multiple different use cases and kind of see how it would be used throughout different areas of the organization. As well as doing a pilot and giving it to not executives, but giving it to, departments and end users, set expectations. They need to have training, so they need to know how to use it. I'll cover that in a second. But they also need to know that they have to use it. So you need to set boundaries with those pilot users to say, we expect you to use, this prompt or this use case over the next couple of weeks, and we are going to follow up with you in an interview or a survey, and you're expected to respond. So here's what I expect as part of this pilot. In return, you get access to Copilot, you get training, it's going to save you time, it's going to benefit you, but I need you to commit to doing these things. And if you don't, we will give that license to a pilot user who is willing to be engaged. So that's something that we found works a lot better than just giving users licenses and letting them try it out. It doesn't work. So engagement, very important. And that's with a pilot, and that's with a general rollout as well. And build and execute training strategy. I'm going to cover that in another slide. So we found training that works very, very well. And we found training that is a necessity. So I'm going to cover what those are and some tips and tricks. The last one on there is plan and execute and build a center of excellence. So your center of excellence is essentially a Microsoft team. Here's an example from another customer. What you'll notice in here, Microsoft have a template that you can implement if you want to, or you could just create an organization-wide team. But even if you're not rolling out to everybody, you've got a pilot group, you need a place to communicate to them. You need a place for them to access training, resources, videos, and you want to give a place for users to be able to ask questions, get support, and share what they've found. So if they found a good prompt, if they found a good use case. So you'll see here an example of a center of excellence, the channels that we have. So we have a general channel for general announcements. This one is limited to the amount of, so only kind of owners can post in there. Announcements, any kind of new things. So Copilot in OneDrive was released recently. Copilot in Outlook to help organize your mailbox and create rules and put emails into folders. That was recently released. So announcements is for new things with Copilot. Flight crew, that's actually a champion network. So we're rolling this out to a very large organization. So we recruited a flight crew to help support staff as they're using it. Copilot training channel, we did lean into the puns, so flight school, we call that. And then takeoff tips and successful landings was for anybody who found something that worked really well and they wanted to share it. A couple of other things that we linked in the team, which we recommend you do as well. Link resources. So if you've got your own training portals that you use, link that. Link the Copilot public site so people can go in and check the up-to-date information and videos and training. Microsoft have lots of free stuff. And we recommend using Prompt Buddy. Prompt Buddy is a pre-built app that Microsoft have added to Power Apps as a template that you can go in and add to your Center of Excellence. So this is what it looks like. So Prompt Buddy allows people in your organization to add their own prompts for different applications and different departments. So I mentioned the 200 use cases that we have. If you are using use cases in your organization and using prompts, ideally you want somewhere to store all of that information so other people can see prompts that are useful and prompts that have helped others. Using Prompt Buddy is your own kind of organization's library for use cases and for prompts. So I highly recommend you look at implementing Prompt Buddy in there as well. Other people can go in and vote and like different prompts, and there's kind of top prompts of the week and so on. So I highly recommend you look at Prompt Buddy. If you go on the Microsoft website and just search for Prompt Buddy, it will have instructions on how to install that. Training best practices. So training, yes, we need training, even if it's just a small group of users. What we found, the most impactful training that we have found is promptathons. Promptathons, we've done it in person and we've done it online. Sometimes they're an hour, sometimes depending on how you want to do it, it could be half a day or how much time people have to spend. Usually they're an hour because people are busy. Promptathons are sessions where we talk about the best practices on how to ask Copilot to do something. This training is key. If you're doing anything, do prompt training. If there's anything you take from the session, do prompt training, because Copilot is a new technology and it's changing constantly. The buttons, the features, the functionality, that's going to change. But what won't change is the way that you're interacting with Copilot. And this is where most people fail. So Promptathons is an hour-long session, and we cover these types of tips and tricks. We cover how to prompt. So we tell people, if you're prompting with Copilot, make sure that you, give Copilot a role. Tell it, you're a project manager and you're trying to create a report. Tell Copilot the context of what you're asking. You're a project manager and you're creating a report to prepare you for a project review board meeting. Tell Copilot who the prompt or who the output is for. This report is for a senior stakeholder, so make sure it's concise. We've used this with local councils before, where the social workers of children's services had to write meeting minutes that a child could read and understand. So they have access to their own kind of records. So we asked Copilot to turn this transcript into meeting minutes with these sections, so a 7-year-old child can read it. Refer to Nicola as mum and Jonathan as dad. So that changed the output into something a child could understand because we told Copilot who's going to read it. So these types of things, these tips and tricks, really make an impact to people when they're using Copilot. And if I'm honest, if somebody gets Copilot and they open up the chat box and they use, create a blog for me and it doesn't do it properly, they'll say, oh, it's rubbish, and they won't look at it again. So do prompt training. That in that hour session, we cover this. And then we show live use case examples. So we show them how to do meeting minutes. We show them how to create a social media campaign. We show them how to analyze some data in Excel. And we show them different prompts. And then we go through an exercise where they write their own prompts. So they have to write it. Okay, let me know if you can hear me now. I am just checking the... Yes, thumbs up. Woohoo, thank you. Apologies for that. My headset, thank you very much for all of the thumbs up. Apologies, my headset just stopped working, so I took it out. So bear with me. I am just going to share my screen again. Thank you for bearing with me, and apologies for the technical issue. So when I was cutting out, I was just talking about use case sessions. So if you can, so with use case sessions, I was saying that if you want to capture your own use case sessions, make sure that you do it after people have been trained. So we want to make sure that they have been prompting properly, they've got, they know how to use all the different apps, then do use case sessions. Use case sessions, again, they're usually about an hour long, where we get feedback from users on, how have you been using Copilot? What types of ways have you been using it? And we have a template that we fill out as well, which is what do you want to do? What's the prompt you're using? And what's the value to you? So that's how we capture some of that. So that's some training best practices. Because we've had a little bit of a technical issue, I'm going to quickly run through some of the other content to make sure we've got enough time to cover everything. But the key thing here, promptathons are key, use case sessions, make sure that's after we've done training. Okay, the other thing I just wanted to show you really quickly was the Copilot dashboard. So this is if you're deciding to look at kind of the impact of Copilot in your organization. So if you are looking at the key features, how it's being used, and the results of the impact, then you have access to a Copilot dashboard. We'll share resources on this. I'll make sure that these slides are shared with you as well. But the Copilot dashboard is available in Viva Insights. And in Viva Insights, you'll be able to see what's called the Copilot dashboard. Now, I'll maybe share a link in the slides, because you will need to add yourself to the Copilot dashboard as a user. So it won't just show up there. You do need to, there is like an admin setting. You need to kind of assign people to be able to see it. But this is an example. So in your Copilot dashboard, you'll see I'm in Viva Insights and Teams. And you can actually look at your adoption rate. You can look at the total licenses you have, active users. You can look at adoption. So that's just who is using the technology. And that's actually quite useful. I'm not clicking it because you'll see everybody's name, but that's actually quite useful if you're looking at resistors who's not using it, and you can maybe do additional sessions. You can look at the impact, so the number of actions taken, the number of hours that Copilot has saved, and there's a value calculator there. You can look at the number of meetings, how people are actually using it. They're using it to summarize meetings. They're using it to generate, actions taken. They're using it to coach their emails. Same with Teams chat, documents, and how they're using kind of Copilot chat. So you can really delve into how it's being used, where maybe apps are not being used, and that can help with maybe, we'll do an additional training session, we'll manage some of the resistance here. We also have the bottom bit here, which we haven't done, but you can use Copilot to create surveys. So Copilot will basically have a survey with these questions, based on 1 to 5, how has Copilot helped improve your quality of work? How much time has it saved you? How productive has it made you? And you can see the response through here as well. So you can do that through Viva Insights, and it will get you surveys that you can send out through Teams. So that's just something to be aware of. And again, we'll share this. We have lots of links and resources on how to enable that and how to access it as well. All right, so here is an example from Barnsley Council that I wanted to share with you in terms of the success that they have seen rolling out Copilot. So this is the Copilot for Microsoft 365, rolled out to 2,300 users. And the savings that they found, so we did the training, we did the prompt-a-thons, we did the communication, the awareness, the use cases. We had a center of excellence to capture kind of some of that. We did have some resistance as well from people, I don't have time to use it, or I don't have time to learn. We had some resistance and fear around using AI. So a lot of the tips that I mentioned earlier, really kind of going through the process with Barnsley on such a large scale did teach us a lot. So they found in the first year, they're looking at 4,600 hours saved per week. Now you may be asking, how did you measure that? In lots of different ways. But a lot of this was on the ground work with end users. Because there were so many, we did lots of floor walking sessions where we interviewed social workers. We sat and did floor walking to help them use meeting minutes, there at their desks when they were using it. So this was a lot of kind of really on the ground work with their staff, making sure that they were using it, they knew how to prompt, and they were getting the best value out of it. That's in lots of different types of savings. We found in the immediate savings within 6 months of rolling it out and getting people to use it, £500,000. And that is from a number of different things. So that is the time saved from across their departments, their staff. That's a reduction in some vacancies. So, not having to hire as many staff. And there's some third-party services that were being used, translation services, payroll tools and apps that they were using, and reduction in agency fees as well. Over the year, that's going to look about £5.5 million worth of savings in year one of using Copilot. And that's not including some of the integrations that we were looking at as well. So integrating with case management systems, so social workers can use it to kind of find information about their different cases. Lots of kind of time savings there as well. So there was a few different things that we looked at, and there's lots of different kind of cashable savings as well to be aware of with Copilot. It's not just time saving and well-being, but there are savings like replacing the services that you might be paying for a lot of money for that Copilot can help with. So it's worth looking at those as well and being aware of those, not just sticking to kind of time savings. The other thing is putting Copilot in your job specs. So when you're sending and recruiting, saying that you use Copilot is a benefit, especially to younger people who are coming into the workplace, who are expecting this kind of technology. It helps with improving recruitment as well. So that's just a use case on if we kind of do all the kind of recommendations I'm mentioning, that's the output of it. So let's spend the last 20 minutes or so. I just wanted to cover the compliance and data security aspect of rolling out Copilot as well. So first thing to do, if you're implementing Copilot and you're maybe not sure where to start, what to do, what do I do about data and compliance and security, is there, big red flags going off in your head saying, oh my goodness, we're going to have to, it's going to take us ages to sort out everything. The first thing to do is to just make sure you know how Copilot works. We do this usually in a readiness workshop with IT, with data governance officers, or any kind of other relevant roles. But we want to make sure that you understand how Copilot works. How does it look at your data? What does it do with that data? Does it send it outside of your tenant? No, it doesn't. Does it, when it's processing data, what does it do? How long does the indexing take to work? How about integrating it with a third-party solution? If I want to connect it to SAP, for example, how does that work? Is there any permissions or policy? There's a lot to kind of go through in terms of how Copilot works, and it helps you prepare and understand, okay, here's the things that we need to do. So one thing that customers always ask is, what does Copilot, is it going to surface everything in my organization? And no, it's not. So it does adhere to your permission structure. So whenever a user searches something in Copilot, they'll only see what they're allowed to see. If they don't have permission to view payroll information, they're not going to be able to see it and ask about it in Copilot. So it does adhere to permissions. It's not just going to surface absolutely everything. It's only going to do it for specific permissions. Saying that, though, there are some things that you can do if you're still worried about, the sharing of information in Copilot. Maybe you're not sure about your kind of permission structure. Maybe there's some really sensitive information you want to just double check and protect. There are some tools to do that, but just understanding how kind of Copilot works. All your data is within your tenant. It doesn't get taken out. It doesn't get, removed. All Copilot's doing is it's indexing and processing the Microsoft graph, which is all of your Microsoft 365 data. It's understanding it. It learns the relationships between that data. It indexes all of it, and then it will turn it into a kind of human speak instead of AI speak, and it'll send it back to the user based on what's being prompted or what's being asked. So that's something to start with, is addressing some of those key questions. What you then need to do is apply appropriate data security controls. So a lot of organizations usually ask, do we need to do data loss prevention, sensitivity labels? Do we need to implement all of this before we turn on Copilot? The answer is no, you don't. And with many other organizations, we have done this kind of starting point, which is just a quick kind of check on your tenant, an optimization assessment. And what we're looking at here is, do you have sensitive sites in SharePoint that are open and public? That's the main thing you want to be aware of. If a payroll site is public, everybody can see it. And I'm hoping that most people aren't in that situation, because people would have been able to search for payroll information, not in Copilot, just in standard search. So you should have had that kind of alarm bell go off already. But that's what we're doing. So what I'd recommend is doing the optimization assessment. We as a partner can do it with you. I can also include links on where to kind of access it. It's an online portal. Then you ask the question, are you ready to deploy Copilot? So the only reason you'd want to look at no is if you have some really sensitive SharePoint sites that you want to restrict. So there is a new feature that has come out in the admin center that allows you to basically provide an allow list of SharePoint sites that Copilot can look at. So when a user asks Copilot to find something, it's only looking at a specific number of SharePoint sites. This is off by default. You have to enable it, but when you enable it, you can add up to 100 sites as your kind of, this is the only sites that someone can look at. That applies to Copilot Chat, and it will apply to search as well. So if you've only allowed 100 sites, when I click on here and I say find the information in this site, it's only going to look at the ones it's allowed to, the ones that you've said, and that applies to search. But don't worry, it also it doesn't kind of stop somebody from accessing that site. So if I have permission to view a SharePoint site, a sales site, for example, I can still go into it in SharePoint and I can still get my files. But when I'm going through and prompting, it's going to prevent me from being able to find anything in Copilot. So that's something you can enable if you want to. You don't have to. What I would say is a good process to put in place is, if somebody does see something they're not supposed to, put in a process where they can raise an information governance request or a service desk ticket, so you can kind of address things as you go. But if you enable the restricted SharePoint search and just do a quick optimization check, you should be kind of ready to go. Then deploy Copilot from Microsoft 365, and then you can further optimize if you want to. So if you want to, you can then start looking at some of the core data loss prevention policies and the sensitivity labels that you can implement. And if you want to go even further, then you can look at things like conditional access, automatic labeling, and so on. If you're looking at implementing these, you don't really need the restricted SharePoint search, because these features will kind of prevent any kind of information being shared where it's not supposed to. So let me show you some examples of what I mean by kind of these core activities and these best in class activities. So this is the kind of standard recommendation. As your kind of basic baseline, I'm hoping that you all have MFA enabled. If you don't, please ask your IT team to enable MFA. That is the text that you get. So it's either using the Authenticator app or the text, or the email or the phone call where you have to just verify you are who you are. You have in Microsoft 365 audit logging enabled as well. So you can go in and audit, and you can audit Copilot actions and prompts as well. The core, the recommendation here is to look at conditional access. Most organizations will have this on. So for those who aren't aware of conditional access, it's something that you get in your standard Microsoft technology. And essentially what happens is your admin can set policies to block access or double check if someone is who they say they are based on how they log in. For example, if I log in to my corporate device from Las Vegas, I'm based in Cardiff. This policy might flag that actually I'm in a different, it's this one, I'm in a different location than I normally am. So it will flag this and it will say, oops, do you want to require MFA just to check this is actually Kat logging in? It will ask me to do MFA and then it will give me access to my content. If I log in on a device that I don't normally use, again, we can either block access or we can require MFA and then give access. So it's additional security in terms of accessing data in Microsoft 365. So we recommend having that on. Most people do already, but check that if you don't. The other couple of ones in here, so it's the kind of recommendation is then to start looking at sensitivity labels. Sensitivity labels work with Copilot. So a sensitivity label, let me just show you some examples, is where I can, in my files, Teams, emails, I can label content depending on how confidential it is. So if I'm writing an email, I can say this is very confidential, and that will be labeled as confidential. And so when I send this email, depending on how you set up the policy, I might not be able to forward this to anybody else, or it might not be able to be shared externally. It might have a watermark on it. So you can create sensitivity labels to control where that information goes, either through an email. It also works in files as well, and in Teams. So if I just show you really quickly, I did have a example. So in files, you've got the kind of sensitivity label, protect, confidential. You've got it in email, and when you set up a team, you can apply sensitivity label to a team. Why is this important? Well, it's handy because if I use Copilot in Word, for example, as I'm doing here, I can ask Copilot to, create a blog about how we worked with this customer and reference this file. Whatever file I reference, so this is Barnsley Council. Let me just maybe choose a different one. Let's see if I've got. So I'm going to reference this file. Oh, my goodness, it doesn't seem to like me today. Let's start that again. Give me 1 second. Draft a blog. And one thing to note here is you'll see when I asked create a blog, it said, oh, I don't know how to do that. If you ever get it, change the word. Change it to draft a blog, create a blog, write a blog. Don't give up, just change your prompt. Draft a blog about how we helped this customer and base it on this file. There we are. So what I've just realized, actually, I did this with a different file. So generating content from this file isn't allowed because it's restricted. So this file has a sensitivity label on it called confidential. So what that means is I'm not able to reference that file because it's a confidential file. Now, there are settings that will allow me to create the blog, but what it will do is it will label this file as confidential because this one I'm referencing has the sensitivity label on it that's confidential. So that's something to be aware of. When you're implementing sensitivity labels, the way it works with Copilot is whatever content I'm referencing, if that has a label on it, this file will either not allow me to do it, or it will change the label as sensitive. So then this content is also sensitive because it's confidential. So that's something to be aware of. And that's something you can configure in terms of your settings, what you want to happen based on that label. All right, so the other one to be aware of, so sensitivity labels, what we also have in here is data loss prevention policies. So data loss prevention policies is something, again, that you have in your Microsoft 365 E3 licensing, and it allows you to create a restriction on Teams messages, files, and it prevents the oversharing of sensitive information. For example, you'll notice in this file, I have credit card information, and don't worry, it'll zoom out in a second. So I have this credit card information, and you'll see it's got a 16-digit number on it. So me as an organization, I've created a policy to say if there's any files with credit card numbers in it, I want you to put a data loss prevention policy to prevent it from being shared with anybody outside the organization. So you'll see here it's given me a policy tip to say that this is, it's a policy with your organization. It's got a, 16-digit credit card number with the word credit card next to it. And what that means is in SharePoint, for example, you'll see I have a little icon next to the file to say that this contains sensitive information. What that also means is when I try to share it, the sharing is restricted. So it's grayed out these options. So I can only share it with people with existing access. And what you'll see is if I go to another file, for example, and I decide to share it, I am able to share it with people I choose or people in the organization. So data loss prevention is just additional security. You've already got it. You just need to configure it to help with sensitive information, whether that's financial information, personal information, medical. You can protect it so it's not shared outside of the organization. If you have an E5 license, you can do that with Teams chat messages as well. So you can block messages from being sent if it has personal information in it. I'm just conscious of time. There's lots to run through, so let me just move swiftly on. The other one I wanted to make you aware of is SharePoint Advanced Management. SharePoint Advanced Management, it is an additional license. So it's an add-on license, it's SharePoint Premium, but it does give you additional security. It allows you to restrict access to OneDrive, even if something's been shared with them. So if somebody shared something in OneDrive, you can still block access to that particular file or to that content. You can block access to OneDrive as well. So if you didn't want people to use OneDrive, or you didn't want people outside a security group to use OneDrive, you could block access. You get additional reporting on there as well. You can block printing and downloading. So if somebody shares something or has access to a SharePoint site, you can block them from being able to download that content locally. And you can manage lifecycle policies. So you can automatically detect sites that are not active, and it will notify an admin or it will notify a site owner. So it's an additional level of security. If you wanted to invest in it, it is an additional license. All right, so the standard prerequisites for Copilot, there is a setup guide as you implement Copilot. So we'll talk you through all of the steps. But I just wanted to cover a couple of things that we've noticed when setting it up, some things to be aware of that usually kind of help get over any issues that you might have implementing Copilot. But again, we've got the resources on here, Microsoft resources, to kind of show you step by step the things and the requirements that you need for Copilot. Some ones I wanted to call out though. So here's an example of the optimization assessment, the results that you get. So it's quite a good one to do. You go through it in a Microsoft portal, and it will give you a baseline of kind of the impact of Copilot and some recommendations of things to do if there's any blockers, if maybe you're not on the right update channel, maybe people don't have Azure AD, and so on. So just some main kind of prerequisites to be aware of. So Copilot for Microsoft 365 is an additional license, so you do need to pay and assign the licenses to staff. You can assign a Copilot Microsoft license to any Microsoft 365 plan. So E3, E5, A3, A5, including any F plans, F1, F3, it works with all the frontline plans. Same with Office 365, it does apply to Office 365, Business Premium, any education, A1, A3, and frontline as well. So that's something to be aware of. One thing that we found was a quick solve for most customers is your update channel. So your update channel is basically set by your organization, and you kind of choose how often your organization receives updates. Some organizations are on a different update channel. The ones that you need to be on for Copilot is the current or the monthly. Now, what we found is customers who are on the current channel sometimes, the current channel, sometimes the desktop apps have some issues with Copilot. So we found some kind of issues where people couldn't use it in the desktop app. The fix for that was to move them to the monthly one. So if you do have issues where people can't access things in Copilot, troubleshooting it might be changing which one you're on. So that's something to be aware of. It is available in current and monthly, but what we found is if you're on current, sometimes it hasn't worked and we need to change it to monthly, and that fixed the problem. Some customers actually didn't have that issue, so again, it's something to be aware of. Account requirements, so best practices, or not best practices, the requirements that you need. All of your Copilot users must have an Entra ID account, so that is an account in Azure AD. You can use Copilot if you're not migrated to the cloud, but it is better if you are migrated to the cloud. Copilot's going to look at your cloud content, and so it's going to work better if you're in Exchange Online, if you're in SharePoint Online for your files, if you're using OneDrive and Microsoft Teams. So you're going to get the best results of Copilot if you are in the cloud. If you're not, please let us know. We're happy to help you get into the cloud. We are a professional services organization, but that's just something to be aware of. It's best to kind of get into the cloud. You can start if you're not in the cloud, but you might not see the full impact if you're not. All right, so I did just want to lastly end with we're absolutely here to help. So we did do the rollout to Barnsley Council, which was 2,300 users. We did all of the activities I've mentioned, the KPIs, the use cases, the training, flight crew, interviews, business case. And there's some photos as well. There's me in the reception. There's some Copilot cupcakes. So if you did want support like this, we absolutely can provide it. We have a couple of offerings available. So we have a readiness check proposition. We also have a Kickstart program and a Copilot accelerator. So depending on what you want, if you just want a little bit of help with some of the elements, we can help with that. Or if you want the full blown, we need a full rollout, we can help with that as well. One thing to mention is there is Microsoft funding that is available. So Microsoft are able to fund these engagements where we can actually deliver most, if not all, of these, depending on how much funding you get. If you're interested to find out if you're eligible for Microsoft funding, please reach out. We're able to check for you. So we can check if you're getting this for free and how much of it you can get. So it's always worth just having a look because, yeah, you might get all of this at no cost. And that is everything we wanted to in today's webinar. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully it's given you some tips and tricks and some information to help you roll out Copilot. If you have any questions, please pop them in the question window. I'll answer those. We've got the last couple of minutes. But please feel free to get in touch if you want to know more. We'll also have some of the team reach out just to see how it went. But if you want to find out about the funding, you want some additional support, please let us know. But thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoy your journey with Copilot from Microsoft 365. It's very exciting. I'll hang on for a minute if there's any questions. If not, please feel free to jump off. Thank you so much. All right. Oh, not seeing any questions come through, so I will end the session there. Thank you very much again, and hopefully you found it useful. Thanks a lot, everyone.